I'm very pleased to welcome Bill Lewis to campus today as our final GM speaker. Bill has been really an integral part of our industry learning and teaching here in our Bachelor of Arts in International Hotel Management program. And he's also become a valuable host employer for us the last few years and a mentor, I think, to the students that have worked with him. We're very proud. This year he's also taken on a student again, so thank you, Bill, for that. Bill is actually a native of Victoria, and I know very well that he's thrilled to finally be at home and also have his work life here. He spent a long time in senior management with the Coast Hotels for many years, and many of those years in freezing cold Edmonton, so I know he's happy to be back here with his family and raising his children. He's also an RU graduate of our BCom program, and he went on to complete his MBA at Guelph University in Hotel and Tourism Management. So it is indeed a pleasure to have you close the series today, Bill, and have everyone welcome you. Bill from the Magnolia Hotel.
Thanks, Max. It's a lot of fun to be here today. As a graduate, it's kind of fun to come back as a graduate to the school. I did my Bachelor of Commerce program from 1999 to 2001, and I was just saying to some of the faculty, it's sure changed a lot in 12 years. I know 12 years ago, no one really knew a lot about railroads because it was only a couple of years in as a school, and even a lot of us that chose the program had a lot of questions, and back then, I think we made the right decisions to come here. It was a wonderful program. It's been a lot of growth since then, but I certainly, the new buildings popping up, it's pretty neat to see for somebody who did their undergraduate degree here, 12, 13 years ago when I started. So it's quite exciting to see it grow as a university, and that second university in Victoria has really taken on a life of its own and, standing on its own right. So that's pretty exciting stuff, particularly as a grad. So pretty proud to be here for that respect. I've got a couple of my Magnolia team here today, which is great. We've got Stephanie and Julian. Julian's also a Railroads graduate in the BCom program, so you can tell when I was looking over the resume for Julian, BCom, Railroads, that stood out for me, absolutely. I will mention school a couple times as well in today's presentation, but for those of you who are in the programs here, you've picked a great school, great program. Absolutely, it's going to help you in your career. So today, what I'm going to go through is just what I've learned, I think, and what I can share with you. I think I'm fairly early to mid-career, but hopefully I can share some things with you from my leadership roles thus far to help you have some takeaways there. My background and career progression. As I go along the way, I'll try and outline some leadership moments, because I know the theme of this year is leadership, and so my goal today was at different points in my career to highlight where there were sort of some leadership learning points along the way. So about me, Margaret kind of said most of this already. So from Victoria, grew up in town here. Went to Milestone College in the late 90s, did my undergraduate degree here at Railroads University, and took that and transferred and went to University of Guelph to do my MBA from 2004 to 2006. So my first leadership lesson was about a teacher I had. We'll call him Dr. L. He was with the University of Guelph, and for anybody who knew me in my undergraduate years, I was always really the numbers guy. Everybody wanted me on my team because I could make Excel spreadsheets spin, and I was your numbers guy. I was crunching numbers, could make sure our numbers made sense in our business plans for the entrepreneurship program. So Dr. L he was one of the color pictures in the brochure for the University of Guelph MBA program. Great teacher. So he approached me about halfway through my graduate degree, sorry. And he says, "You're going to write a paper on generational differences." So, ooh, Dr. L, that's pretty scary stuff. I'm not an OB guy. But he gave me some really wise advice at the time. And one of the early leadership lessons I learned before I was really even getting into management or just getting in there, because at that point I was still early in my career, is really the organizational behavior stuff and the people stuff is the courses you learn about that. They really are what are going to make or break you as a leader. The things you learn about numbers, those are truly important, because your ability to dissect and analyze numbers are critical. But your leadership abilities are more made or broken on your ability to motivate people, lead teams, grow teams. So I go back and thank Dr. Lynch when I talked, Dr. L, sorry, when I talked to him from time to time for pushing me in that direction, because it really forced me to get out of the box into an area that I probably learned a lot more from than doing some numbers courses, because I can remember also being lobbied by one of the profs there, and I think he wanted me to do an analysis on the proximity of airports to hotel occupancies, and hearing Dr. L saying about generational differences, I was like, okay, let's pick the leadership angle. So I think great careers can often be started with a lemonade stand. So this is my first days in hospitality. That's Willows Beach, circa 1979. And I thought it was a funny icebreaker to start the day. There's also another Royal Roads graduate here, not in this room today, but who did her MBA here. Mandy Farmer from Accent Inns is the one in the pink dress. So there was a lot of lemonade leadership talent on that street that got into hospitality. So I did ask her permission to share this. I scanned it and sent it to her last week, and didn't necessarily know that she was in the picture, but we got our early start in hospitality, selling lemonade out of Willows Beach, late 70s, about 5 or 6 years old. So my first paid career started as a dishwasher at Government House in Victoria here. And that was really one of those fluke things where, you know, a few times you're going to hear today, I didn't really intend to be in the hotel business, but I absolutely love it now, and at some point figured out it's probably where I'm going to stay. But got a job as a dishwasher at Government House, and the chef was a family friend, and he called my parents and asked if my sister could come work for them as a dishwasher for the weekend. Turned out she was lifeguarding that weekend, and they said, well, our son could come. I went, well, how old's he? He's 13, which you can't legally work now at 13, I don't think, but you could back in the 80s. So he said, okay, chef, I won't mention his name, but the chef said, well, tell him if he comes to work this week and works hard, he can come back again next week. Sounded like a fair deal. It was just a nice bike ride up from the house. So I worked there for 4 years through high school. Made it to the service floor as well in Government House doing banquet functions, which was pretty exciting to meet some. I met Prince Philip, got to work at a function with a number of different premiers, which is very exciting stuff. Later on, I worked at the Old England Inn, which is now the English Inn and Resort. That is in Esquimalt. It's an interesting place to work. It's gone through a lot of ownership changes over the years, and learned a lot of great lessons, and learned a lot of lessons about things, that takeaways that maybe I need to watch for as I get into my management career. So at 18, I stumbled across a job with Coast Hotels at the Victoria Harbour side. It's a property that at the time had been open for about 8 or 9 months. And a friend of mine was going back to school, gave me a lead on a job to be an overnight bellman. So I walked in for my interview, and this is far fancier than any hotel I had ever stayed in. I grew up doing sports trips at Best Westerns and Motel 8s, and my parents had a large family with 4 kids, and really that's the type of thing I grew up with. So I did not have a silver spoon fine taste for hospitality growing up. So it sounded pretty exciting. And I guess that's my next leadership note that I take away from early in those years, is that whether it was at the Old England Inn as a busboy and a bellman, or on the bell team and then the front desk team at the Coast Harbour side, I always strive to do the best at every role along the way. And I never tried to do so by being better than anybody. It was more about teamwork and just, you know, hard work, learning your job, being a great colleague, and the understanding and hope that, you know, the hard work would pay off in the end and people would get noticed. So I quickly moved from the bell to the front desk at the Coast Harbour side. Worked in the front desk and night audit for a few years. And then, this is about the late mid-90s at this point. And at that point, I'd been out of school for a few years. I kind of had this goal that I was going to work for a few years, and then I'll go back to school eventually. And that's always one of those slippery slopes, dangerous ones for parents, especially when kids want to take a few years off, because you never know necessarily that they will go back. In my case, it took a little push in the right direction from my future wife. So about 1996, 1997, I was a wonderful desk clerk at the Coast Harbour side. Still didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I figured out that I was probably going to marry this girl on the screen here, which I did, as you can see by the picture. But figured out that I was probably going to marry this girl on the screen here, my wife, Jennifer. And I had a bit of a challenge in my hands. She was 3 years younger than me, and she was 3 years ahead of me in school. So kind of had this thought, and my mom was nagging me the whole time too. She goes, you got to go back to school, you got to make a good husband. But it was true. I did take it as a push to go back to school. And so I did. I went back in about 1996 to Camolson College. Ended up spending about 6.5, 7 of the next 10 years in school while I was working full-time. Didn't take any time off, because at that point I was already getting into supervisor level positions and had kind of wasted too many years to have that luxury of going to school full-time. So really hit the books hard. And I will say, I think school is critically important in hospitality in today's workforce. I don't necessarily think it was 20 or 30 years ago when I got into the business. I think there was more of you could work your way ahead. But I know it is a lot more of a difference maker today. And it does open a lot of doors. It builds your personal network, puts more tools in your toolbox, just makes you more of a critical thinker, and can differentiate you from other candidates. And I can honestly stand here today and say, whether it's my BCom or my MBA, at different points in my career, it's made large differences in my suitability for a job and getting interviews and getting doors open. I can't say it necessarily got me this job or that job, but I can tell you that it's come up in every interview, the MBA especially. You know, it opens a lot of doors for me. And so I think you've picked a great program, and it'll absolutely help you in the future. So my first roles in supervisory management were with Coast Hotels, and I stayed with them until 2009, and I'll go through that progression with you. So I was a system supervisor, and that was really a side job from being a front desk clerk in a small hotel. But that was my first role with them that was a supervisor level. In 1998, I moved to assistant accountant and duty manager. So I was in charge of inventory control, payables, budgets. That also was a great leadership moment, which I'll get into for one of my key mentors. His name was Mr. D, and he actually built that job for me so I could come to Royal Roads and study, because he had seen me get into, show some interest. Maybe I was that kid, just like two of his sons who'd taken a little longer to go back to school. So he actually built a full-time position for me as assistant controller, assistant accountant, and duty manager to allow me to excel at my studies here at Royal Roads and continue to work full-time. So that, about 2000, I was promoted to that hotel to front office manager, and then in 2003, promoted to director of operations in the Coast Victoria Harborside Hotel. So with that same mentor, Mr. D, my next leadership milestone was Y2K. And as many people may remember, the world was supposed to explode, computers were going to stop working, all corporations were taking this very, very seriously. And me, young, ripe age of 25, 26 years old, was tasked with making sure all those systems worked at midnight on January 1st, 2000. So everything did. All the computers reset to the next day, the lights didn't turn off, all the guests were okay. But one of my tasks for part of that role was being in the hotel overnight with the management team, even though I was not into management yet. And my reward for doing all this great planning and talking to suppliers with the Y2K issue was to go for a walk in a windstorm with Mr. D, who is one of my mentors, and we had a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses, and we walked the building to make sure everything was okay. But really, at that point, he said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, with all due respect, I think I want your job. Not necessarily today or tomorrow. And he pledged to do everything he could to make that happen. There was also a secondary message that he had, was he wouldn't make that happen for me unless I would help other people get to that same goal. Now, that was a great leadership moment for me. Number 2 here is, this leader always pledged that if you were going to get ahead, he would be the first one to promote you, to get ahead and help you get ahead in your career. But that had to come with grooming other people along the way. And this particular leader had an amazing track record with Coast Hotels for seeing people come up to be GMs, and there's still 3 or 4 in this day who you could rightfully say had trained under this gentleman. So it's a pretty good track record, pretty good learning, and I was very proud to get myself promoted, but as well, a couple of friends to this day helped them get started with their careers below me, and as I moved out of that building, there was a couple of people ready to move into this in their place. So 2004, I got my first opportunity to be a hotel manager, general manager in the Coast Hotel chain. Moved to the Coast Vancouver Airport Hotel. And that was a great role for me. First role, cut my teeth as a GM in charge of a hotel. So a couple of points about that job is, first, it was critically important for that chain because they had a new president come in January 1st, 2004. And this would be the very first management contract that he had gained as the president of that company. And I was the GM going into that hotel. And so that was a whole lot of pressure on my shoulders. And certainly I thought I was up for the challenge, but I think he was a little nervous that he was taking on his first first new contract as the president of a company that to his youngest rookie GM that got to go in there and cut his teeth. But one other thing, 2 pieces of advice he gave me. I'll refer to some parts of this book, but he gave me this book. It's called The First 90 Days when I took that first job. I've probably bought this book 15 times in the last 10 years and given it to different leaders along the way. And whenever I can't find it on my bookshelf, it means I've given it to somebody and I have to go buy a new copy. So I think you have my last copy, don't you? I gave it to Julian when I hired Julian about a year ago from the Marriott. He got the last copy, so I had to go out and buy one this week because it reminded me that the bookshelf no longer had a copy. But it was a very good book because it forces you to, it's a lot of common sense stuff, but it forces you to think through your business situation, think through who your stakeholders are, and identify where you need to negotiate success in different roles and depending on your business situation and who the difference makers are there. So the other great advice that President of Coast gave me when I stepped into this job is he said, and I still try and use this to this day, is he said, leave your ego at the door. He had a funny little story in his glass corner office that I could go home to my wife and dance around my room and say, I got the job, I'm a general manager, and he said, you can shout and holler out in the streets if you want to, that's all fun stuff, you should be proud of yourself. But when you walk through that door, there's a team that needs you to come in and drop your ego, go in and lead. And leading is the critical factor there. So that was great advice. I still try and use it to this day. I'm not one to have a lot of egos in my buildings. I think there's pride, a lot of pride in the buildings I've been involved with, but great advice he gave me starting out. So property profile for the Coast Vancouver Airport was a 132-room property, about 3 minutes and 5 kilometers from Vancouver Airport, and they run about, I don't know, 300,000 kilometers a year on two 15-passenger vans between Vancouver Airport and the hotel. And very hands-on property. The GM, if there's a canceled flight and there's rooms to be had, the GM hops in the van and goes and gets those passengers. And literally, there are days in the year where there's a canceled flight in a snowstorm somewhere. It could be Chicago. Now the plane can't fly out. Air Canada's got 300 passengers to put in a hotel. You basically go and get them as fast as you can get bands, you get rooms. So we had 3 15-passenger vans. I think we calculated we did 400,000 clicks a year on that little 5K route back and forth, 24 hours a day. But airport hotels are a very different experience than, say, somewhere like Victoria. So I came from Victoria. Victoria, the ferry comes in, the ferry goes out, and that is your travel patterns. The airport sort of closes down at a certain time of the day. No one's coming past those hours. Airport, you end up with your average length of stay of about 18 hours. You end up with flipping rooms in the middle of the night. Taught me a lot of new exercises. And the other thing with that, the leadership lessons in that building were that particular property was kind of down and out. Physically, it wasn't in great shape. Business-wise, it wasn't in great shape. And the morale, to be frank, I was surprised that some of the long-term employees had stayed as long as they did, because it had once had a stronger history in that chain, but it had seen a lot of competition come in. 9/11 had been very tough on that hotel. And the hotel was down and out, so our job was to get in there and sell, get in there and clean up the building with a pretty limited budget. I think we spent $300,000 or $400,000 cleaning up that building with just paint, some new carpets, some new beds, some prints on the wall, enough to really show the customer there's a difference. And from there it was service and selling. We got into that hotel, we got the service levels up, put a smile back on everybody's face, and celebrated some successes. We, as we got going, our salesperson had some great success getting some new accounts. I had some revenue management skills that got us a lot of room nights over the first year in a number of different markets. And those two things combined, we had some moments in our first year where we were actually the busiest coast hotel in the chain, coming from this down and out hotel that I think people had kind of forgotten about. So I can tell you when we got there, we celebrated success, and we'd go, and there was a lot of 10, 15-year employees in that building, and we would walk around and say, you're the busiest coast hotel in this chain today. That's got to be exciting for you. And there was some pride, and we put the pride back into the building. It was a great place to work, very hands-on management team, very young management team. I mean, I think our entire management team was in their very early 30s, and we were ambitious and determined to conquer the world with our little hotel that really was a pretty decent hotel, but it was nothing special. So it was all about selling and service. And my goal in there was just to keep the mood upbeat, keep people working, show hands-on leadership, and we had a lot of success very quickly in that hotel. And I will introduce my support team, because some people have put their support team right up at the beginning as a family picture. I've kind of introduced mine along the way. So Vancouver, in my 2 years and 2 months there with Coast Hotels in that stint, had our first son, my wife and I. That's him over in the left when he was about the age of when we moved up to our next location. That's him closer today. And that is my MBA from Guelph that I picked up along the way in Vancouver when he was a newborn. So that'll tie back to some slides later in the presentation. So the next stop was Edmonton. My reward for 2 good years in Vancouver was a promotion to Edmonton. And that is an actual picture of my wife in front of the Coast Edmonton Plaza Hotel, minus 21, as you can see by the tire shop across the street. And love her to death. She has a smile on her face. So with all joking aside, I actually really enjoyed Edmonton. It's actually a wonderful city for families and kids. And you know, coming from somewhere like the West Coast, there is actually a lot of fun to living in a winter climate for a few years. I didn't bring the pictures of the backyard ice rink, but I was determined and did it in my last year there. So my son and I were skating around in a backyard ice rink for our last year in Edmonton. But the opportunity that was there was to run a big hotel. Was it a just under 300-room, 4-star hotel in downtown Edmonton, very corporate convention hotel. That was a lot of fun. It was during the oil boom, 2006, 2007, which was very hectic. I think our annual occupancy in that oil boom was probably 82 or 83% occupancy in a 300-room hotel. Just busy, booming, lots of full houses. Really exciting environment, but very different than the Coast Airport and very different than the Coast Harbor side, because those were both 132-room hotels, and now I was up at 300 rooms with a staff of 200. So the leadership lessons in that building were considerably different than what I had learned with the first 2 places and the roles I'd taken on thus far in my career. First and foremost, established management team. I really had to spend a lot more time proving myself first to a management team as well as a staff base. You know, because the Coast Airport, we moved in, there was only 3 or 4 managers. You know, the staff really got to see firsthand, you know, who and how you could work and who you were. Here we had a management team of 10 or 12 people. I had employees or managers, working for me who were literally twice my age, which was interesting to say the least, to gain their respect at times, particularly for someone who wrote their graduation research on generational differences. It was a real eye-opener to go up to a hotel that I'd actually conducted first-hand research during my grad research on this hotel as one of my 5 or 6 subject hotels, so that was kind of fun. So that was a lot different. I really had to earn the respect of a lot of the managers there, and we did. We had a lot of success. And our tasks in that hotel were to sustain momentum. We needed to sustain momentum. The hotel was very successful in the oil boom, 2006, 2008 years, and we had to look for ways to improve. We had to look for the ways to steal market share in a hot market, because as things were cooking at all the hotels, everybody's occupancies were through the roof. To your corporate company, you want to be seen to be taking more occupancy, more market share than the next guy, because that's what you do. That's the nature of the business, to want to be more successful than the hotel down the street, and particularly for a young manager who's trying to cut their teeth and show how much they can do, and grow on an already strong staff morale. This was probably one of the more challenging aspects. We had a lot of success at it. Our employee satisfaction raised every year I was there, which was great. But the challenge here was the oil boom. If you didn't like your job, you could literally walk out the front door of a hotel, walk down the street, and someone would hire you virtually sight unseen. You know, it was just the wild, wild west for people looking for work, and you had to be pretty responsive as a management team and really lead by example, and have foster great morale in your buildings to try and keep those people with you. This hotel fortunately had great morale, so it was, I don't want to say easy to work with, but it was easy to keep this team motivated and make that a great building to work in, which helped attract people. There we go. So hotel number 3, and winter 2007, with a newborn child at home, I changed jobs again. We had a new Coast property undergoing a brand conversion, and at that time, I think the brand conversion had probably taken more resources of management than was originally thought to need in that building. And it had private owners who wanted to see a lot of change in a hurry. I guess fortunately for me, and unfortunately for the amount of work it involved, but it was still a very fun job, was one of the things that led them to Coast was the reference from the Coast Airport, how much change we'd accomplished in such a hurry. And so I got a call winter 2007 that they'd really like me to come and run their hotel. And even though I was just up the street, 6 blocks away was the other property, so it was quite a whirlwind change to go. You move your family across to one job and you get your head around working one job, but at the same time, you're a leader. You go in, you find ways to lead, you find ways to motivate people, and you find the great things to sell in your building, and you find ways to make those owners happy, because that's, you know, as a corporate guy, that's what you do. And that's where I put my focus. So moved down the street, 6 blocks away, to a 303-room hotel, and this, the biggest leadership learning in this entire building was mechanics and engineering. This building was the tallest building in Western Canada. It was built, the Coast Edmonton House. It was a converted apartment building. It was not naturally a hotel, so it was not, you know, it doesn't always look and feel like a hotel, so the goal of a hotelier is to find ways to make it look and feel more like a hotel. Some great selling features, all suites, you know. I think we had 60% of the suite inventory in the city of Edmonton, which is an awfully large city to have that much of the suite inventory, so there were some markets that helped us sell to. And still had some original apartments, about 20 of them in the building, so you had 303 hotel rooms and you'd still see your permanent residents walking through the lobby, and to them you were just the landlord. So there was a really interesting dynamic there. The company that owned the building and the 5 others that Coast was running for them has parent offices, head offices on the top 2 floors, so you had that dynamic as well. So it was a very dynamic 46-story building. You had a head office, you had residents, you had a hotel to run on 30 stories. So very exciting time at that hotel. A lot of renovations. We conducted several $1 million in renovations, 11 stories of parking, which was something else. And a lot of mechanics to get used to, bursting pipes in the winter, ice shows from burst pipes, and learning about interfloor cooling systems that from Western Canada you'd never think that you'd never learn about. Learned about elevator dynamics, so a lot of exciting learning in that hotel. Some leadership lessons from that building were, for the first time in my career with that company, I had to sell Coast as a company to new people that really never chose it. They, you know, and they need to know, as a company culture, how do you sell us on Coast? What is that? So that was an interesting change, because you're so used to selling externally, and in this case, you really had to sell internally and externally to build morale by getting people to buy into a chain, and externally to build your business. There was probably more reluctance to change from the staff base that I've seen in any hotel, because they had been a hotel for years and years as an independent. So there was a lot of pride involved with being an independent. And here the big corporate guy comes in, and we're going to, you know, on behalf of their owners who chose us, but we're going to come in and we're going to tell you being a Coast Hotel is the best thing in the world. And here's why. But the goal was to build some momentum in that hotel as well. Sell people on why it was great to be a Coast Hotel, to have it look and feel like a Coast Hotel, which is what your brand conversion is all about. And steal some market share, which was especially fun to do with from the existing Coast, because nothing builds pride better in your building than taking market share from your hotel up the street. It is a team sport, but there was a lot of inter-hotel pride in there. That you know, there's the old kid on the block and the new kid on the block type of dynamic going on with the new hotel and the old hotel. So we were able to gain a lot of motivation in the staff by the first months that we beat the other hotel in occupancy, and just, you know, sharing that success with the team. And I think a lot of that goes on in companies where you have multiple locations close together. And I think depending on how long they've been around each other, it's probably a little more friendly. And I think this was a friendly rivalry. We had shared staff parties, we had lots of shared staff events, but there's still a lot of pride in your own team in saying, you know, here, look what we did compared to they've been a hotel in this chain for 10 or 15 years. We've been there for a year and a half. Rah team, let's go. And we got some staff morale going in that building. We really got those teams charged up. And before I move on to the next slide, the one thing as a leader, I think I'm probably most proud in the teams that I've had the pleasure of leading is when we measured it with that last company, with Coast, I had gains in employee satisfaction at every hotel in every year that I was with them. And I compared to the last year in that building. My property in the Coast Airport was the highest employee satisfaction in the chain 2 years in a row. One of the full years I was there, in the year that I ended up leaving towards the tail end of the year. And that's a pretty proud thing, because everybody in your building are the ones that deliver the service. I can pitch in, I can help, but I'm not the one doing all the beds, all the work, all the check-ins, all the check-outs. You can't achieve great service without great teamwork. And so one of my proudest achievements as a leader is to be able to build those teams and have people just be charged and motivated and deliver great service. So along the way in Edmonton, this is the other piece of my support network that entered the mix, you might say. So this is my daughter, and she was born in 2007, and there's a nice snowy backdrop, nice and fitting for Edmonton. So at the end of Edmonton, about 2009, took a look back on that last decade, and there was a list of things that accomplished all in the last 10 years. Extremely proud to do these all in such a period of time. It also takes a toll on you and your family, and at that point, I had to say there were some things back in Victoria that I needed to get back to for family reasons, and not necessarily forever, but for me, the balance was starting to be lost. So that's where I sought to make the tough decision to leave Coast Hotels. They were a great company for me for 17 years, a lot of shared success there, but had a difficult decision to establish more balance in my life. And really, we made the decision to move back to the West Coast, and this is the team that made that decision. This is my support team closer to today, son, daughter, beautiful wife. This is up in Parksville about 3 or 4 months ago in the winter. And if you can take pictures like this in the winter in Parksville, this is why you move back to the West Coast. So that led me to Atlantic Hotels and the Magnolia Hotel and Spa. And that was a very exciting opportunity for me. I did some networking and research. I decided literally, I think it was about May 1st, 2009, that I was moving back to Victoria. And I'm a bit of a task guy with lists and whiteboards and making lists and crossing things off. So came home from a list, which I think most GMs are around the room. But decided that my goal was to get back to Victoria. Didn't know what, didn't know where. Was pretty sure it wasn't going to be Coast Hotels though, because at that time it didn't look like that would happen. So it's time to get back to the West Coast, and did a lot of networking. For those more, in today's more techno-savvy age, I used a lot of LinkedIn to call people I hadn't talked to in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Made a lot of phone calls, and really made a goal to just reach out to somebody every day, knowing anywhere where this would lead. About 6 weeks later, somebody anonymously forwarded me this job posting for the Magnolia Hotel and Spa, which was quite exciting. I knew of it. I didn't know a lot about it. It was, I was from Victoria, but it was pretty new and only built a few years before I left town. And I was able to meet at Atlantic Hotels, who are the management company who operates the hotel, which was exciting. I'll tell a little more about them in a moment. But it was a pretty exciting opportunity to get me into a much different market than I had ever done before. Coast is a very mid-value chain, 3- and 4-star hotels, and this was an independent. This is very upscale, award-winning, and on talking with the owners and on talking with Atlantic Hotels, it sounded like a very exciting opportunity. So I am currently the general manager, and almost coming up on 2 years now, of the Magnolia Hotel and Spa. It's managed by Atlantic Hotels, as I mentioned. It's a 64-room boutique hotel with Spa Magnolia and Prime Steakhouse. We pride ourselves in being one of Canada's premier boutique hotels, which I think we can stand on our reputation. We've been awarded in the Condé Nast list several years. We have been a 4-diamond hotel since we opened. We made the top 10 luxury hotels in Canada list by TripAdvisor about 3 months ago, and last month we made Expedia's Insider Select on their guest ratings as the 2nd highest ranked hotel they had in Canada, behind L'Hermitage in Vancouver. Customer service is a very, very big focus in that hotel. It's a lot of fun. We have a great time at that hotel. It is a couple pictures of the property. Interesting being an independent coming from a chain, because you really have to relearn. You really have to relearn your marketing. You really have to relearn your standards. I mean, there is Atlantic Hotels in the background, which is a management company of 45 hotels, so there's some purchasing benefits, some marketing benefits. But at the end of the day, you're an independent hotel, and your brand is your service and your image. And in our hotel, it's that quality of service, quality of attention and detail that delivers our brand and how we're known. So a lot of fun to be involved with, and we have a great small hands-on team. Here's my shameless plug. Check us out at magnoliahotel.com. Check out our social seam on Facebook and Twitter. And Atlantic Hotels is the management company, which is a leading Canadian hotel management company with 45 locations across Canada. Typically, when I come to a setting like this, most people haven't heard of Atlantic Hotels because a lot of the hotels are branded like Westons and a lot of Marriotts, a lot of Holiday Inns. And Really, it's a management company which operates hotels for either themselves and their partners and owners or other owners. So the Magnolia is privately owned locally by two entrepreneurs who built the hotel in 1998. Our sister property in town is the Victoria Marriott Inner Harbor, which is corporately owned. But very exciting and dynamic company, opening a lot of locations. We've got 2 openings this week, one in Winnipeg and one in Invermere, BC. I think that takes us to 10 openings, Stephanie, 10 openings in the last 3 years. 10 openings in the last 3 years across Canada. We were just at a conference where they highlighted all the openings, so just had to check. But I think, yeah, 10 openings of new hotels in the last 3 years. So as much as I left one great hotel company, I joined another. And it's fun to be involved in an independent little boutique hotel, but as well have the corporate background of a greater organization. So the Magnolia, the leadership goals there were to improve the quality, service, and reputation of an already very, very successful hotel. The standards are up here, and really the learning curve was getting used to the level of service more so than I had, and we do it in a very relaxed way, but it is still, we have a very strict attention to detail there. Marketing and rebrand, we launched a new look and feel to our advertising in the first year I was there. That was something that took a little persuasion on the owner's part, but set some marketing goals and launched a new look. Build staff morale. I think that's a repeating thing you've seen in every slide I've done about every hotel. But it's something, as I say, it's a lot easier to run a great hotel and achieve success with a great team, and nothing does that like morale. So we have a lot of fun in that hotel, just like the last 3 that I was involved with, and we have a very tight-knit team. It's a lot smaller, so it's almost as if it's like a family team at times. And we launched a team into social media, the social scene there. That was on the last slide, but that was a new thing for me because I had done none of that in the past, and so a lot of learning on the fly. And it's ongoing. Great hotel. We look forward to lots more success there. So that's my career to date in a nutshell, and a few of the leadership examples I can give you along the way. So I guess the next thing is, what have I learned, and what is my leadership style? Because this whole theme on this year's speaker series is about leadership. I've learned you need balance, absolutely. I think that the decade, that slide that I put up with the decade with a couple degrees, a couple children, 3 hotel moves, 4 hotel moves, all of that. I think we were moving a little out of balance there, and what it taught me is I need more balance. And I work very hard and have a great support team at home, but balance is important, and finding ways to be as ambitious and conquer, reach all your goals, but at the same time keep balance in and out of the workplace is very important. I know first and foremost you always have to enjoy what you do. I don't think anybody who works with me at the Magnolia or any of the last hotels I was at doesn't doubt for a second that I love working in the hotel business. I joked before the presentation to Candace and Mags that really didn't know I was going to stay in the hotel business in my early 20s, but towards the end of my late 20s it became apparent to me, and I was having a lot of fun at it, and there is a reason why I love the business, and it's a lot of fun to be involved with, and it's a fun business, it's a hard-working business, but if you're a people person, you enjoy teams, and you enjoy your guests, it's a great business to be involved with, lots of fun. Always over-prepare, that's one of my rules of thumb. I like to think that knowledge is power in terms of knowing as much as you can about your market, knowing as much as you can about all aspects of your business. I think one thing I've been noted from a few different owners I've worked for is I'm usually about 200 or 300% prepared for any ownership meeting, any business plan meeting. I'm a little anal retentive that way when it comes to those types of meetings, but really I'll need about 10% of the information in that room. I want to be prepared for any question under the sun. And I've actually had owners and I've had corporate people from the different companies tell me, looking back, that they say, what a great presentation. You were ready for anything. There was nothing they couldn't throw at you. And I take that aspect to a lot of elements of work. Always over-prepare. Make sure you know everything you have available to you. Back to this book, the other critical thing for success that I've learned is, one of the lessons in this 90 Days book is to identify your stakeholders and know who it is in your current role as a leader that is the one that dictates your success. A lot of cases in hotels, that's owners. Your corporate representatives, so your vice presidents and your direct reports. And what that book, I read that book with every job change I've had along the way, and really to look at the business situation, but also to try and figure out in a new role in the first 90 days and make a plan is, who in this building do I need to impress? Currently or who do I need to work to gain the trust of as well, not just impress. And in my building now, that's owners, that's staff, that's the management team, that is the Atlific VP and regional manager. And the key there is to know, what elements are going to please and satisfy each of those people. And it's very different. So an owner's looking for one thing, corporate's often looking for something very different. The staff base and the management team often need something else. And your goal as a leader is to try and satisfy all those needs. Qualities of leadership. So my management style, which I think I'll speak to a little bit about my leadership style, I really enjoy a fun and open environment. I think the hotels I'm around are pretty loose. They are a little laid back. They're very competitive and hungry, though, by the same token. I've always been a very competitive person. I think, again, anybody in my buildings, I think that I've had the pleasure of leading will know that first and foremost, I have a lot of fun. Secondarily, we're competitive. We're always trying to be better at something, and that's not always necessarily better than the competition at this. It could be better at what you already do. It could be better at service, or better at delivering service, or sometimes better at winning market share, better at, but there's always goals to try and be better, and I'm a very competitive person in that respect. And it's something I think in my buildings I've always demanded that you need to have some hunger and some fire to always be improving. And it comes out in very many different ways. And so that's leave your egos at the door was the other one I had on there from the beginning. There's no I in team. That's a kind of old saying, but it's true, not just from a spelling aspect. So that's the way I think I operate in the buildings I've had the pleasure of being in. Is fun, lots of openness, lots of we do have a good environment, kind of loose, but at the same time very hungry and always looking to do better. Another thing I've learned along the way is change can be very hard. People do not necessarily like change, particularly in the workplace, and as a leader that can be quite a task to step up to go in and facilitate change and gain people's trust and sell them on why we need to change things. Typically, I think a lot of hotels I've been involved in, even if processes are wrong or backwards or aren't achieving the desired goals, you can have people that want to do that way forever because that's what they always know and that's where their comfort zone is, particularly in a job in different departments across a hotel. So gaining trust and selling change is always a tough task in a hotel as a leader. A couple more slides here on what I think I've taken away. Know yourself, so find your differentiating points. In a lot of different companies, they use 360-degree indexes or leadership profiles. I've found those valuable, having done them 3 or 4 times. And I've always had success in building teams in hotels. I've also always had success partly because I do like to complement myself with people that I think will have a skill set that I'm not necessarily is my natural skill set. Great teams are knowing where your comfort zone is and playing to that and finding some other stars on your team who have those complementary skill sets. And look for great attitudes, because you can't have a fun, open environment with competitive and hungry spirit without great attitudes to start with. So lastly, I think my goal as a leader is to set a vision and a goal, motivate people. Establish some business momentum. I've had some success in that respect in getting some momentum going in teams and just getting teams charged up and setting a goal. And it's different in every building what that goal is. Some are internal, some are external, some are about recognition, some are about business results, but really selling that team on what that means and what that looks like. Well, did a lot of these little slides of things I'd learned along the way, but couple last things were don't beat yourself up. I think you learn from your mistakes, and you're going to make a lot along the way. It's what you take away from them, and never get too high, never get too low. There's going to be bad days, and it's your ability to bounce back, and it's also your ability for your team not to see you down and out. You got to bounce back right away, and you got to come back even after a bad guest complaint or a bad day at the office, and bring it the same day, bring it the next day. Make sure that you don't let that motivation in your building get down. There was one of the speakers early in the series who had a great line that I don't remember the exact line about, that you come to work to inspire people one way or the other, and you get that choice. And I think that was Mark Andrew from Fairmont, and that was a great line, because you do. If you come to work with a down attitude, it's going to be contagious. If you come to work with a great attitude, it's going to be contagious as well. So even if I'm not feeling at my best, or I have something that might be bothering me, my other goal as leader is to be in there and try and motivate people and try and start with the best attitude in the place. And hopefully it's contagious and wears off from there. You need balance, lastly. For me, traveling, exercise, family. Most of my traveling with little kids is fairly close, nothing exotic or international, but some exercise to keep your body mentally engaged, I find as well, and always finding time for family. So that is my leadership presentation today. Thank you for listening and giving me your ears, and hopefully you took something away from it, and thank you. Yes. Okay. Questions? Yes. Thank you.
Actually, the quote that you were looking for was aspire to inspire before you expire.
That's right. Aspire to inspire before you expire.
I'm just wondering, for the balance, for GMs in general, like some GMs just have to work extremely long hours depending on what property they're at or
Yeah.
what season of the year, whatnot. How do you balance in times like that?
Well, I would say, firstly, technology has been a great balance maker in the last 10 or 20 years with Blackberries, with laptops, with ability to work. So especially with a young family, I often set some time up in the evenings or in the weekends to take work away with me. I do stay in touch with my business a lot of the time outside of work, a lot. I think the managers in the building really get to know that very quickly, that I'm never really off, but I don't and haven't in the 4 GM roles I've had work extremely crazy hours. There's budget seasons and things like that where there are really long work weeks, and there is circumstances regularly where you're working different. You got to be flexible, absolutely, because you're in a 24-hour business. So I think the key is establishing that. For me, is using technology to my best advantage, being able to do some work outside of the regular work hours and finding that balance. So, last night, I'm in budget season right now, so I allotted about 2 hours last night to look over budgets and proofread some areas, and that was between about 8 and 10 in the evening on my laptop in my house, in the comforts of having already put my kids to bed, and and for everybody it's different, but for me, that's how I've been able to do it. Yes, Alana? What are the biggest challenges? Supply and demand most months of the year. There's the market is not what it was, say, pre 9/11. I don't think it's ever recovered, and there is not as much business to go around, and it's a very, a lot of it's leisure driven a lot of the year, so it's a very price sensitive market. So I'd say it's just supply, lots of competition, lots of great product. We have a number of great 4 diamond properties across town, and lots of great other properties as well. But it's a big, it's a small market, but it's got a lot of great supply. So I think supply would be the big thing, and the demand that has never really recovered after 9/11 compared to what it was in, say, the 1990s. Candace.
Well, somebody up ahead.
I'll go next to Dr. Long.
I noticed in your career that you worked at some very different properties, from airport to a convention property to all suites property, and now you're at a boutique property. So you've had a real mix of
Yep.
different hotels. I was wondering how those hotels may have different demands on your leadership style. The second part was, would you suggest that that is a way of maybe building a career, is trying different types of properties?
Well, I think to answer the second question, I think it's critical to be in a number of different properties and markets to understand how different types of hotels operate, because I think even if a hotel in Victoria, boutique hotel, has nothing to do with a long stay property and nothing to do with a convention hotel, there's always going to be something you can learn from each market. And that's one thing that I think I learned in every different property, was something a little different, and a takeaway on how they all operate. I think markets are as different as hotels themselves too. Vancouver Airport was a very different market. Vancouver Downtown, which I hadn't worked in, is a different market. Victoria, Edmonton was a different market. So I think you try and take some learning away from every single one of those roles. And in terms of leadership styles in the different buildings, very much so. You still start with motivation and setting goals and leading a team, but there's very different leadership in hotels that have a lot of catering or a lot of food and beverage versus those that don't. the markets were very different. If you've got a lot of business-oriented customers, that is very different than leisure-oriented customers. I think probably the best example is the Magnolia in a boutique hotel. Even we have months in the year where we run as high in occupancy in a winter month as, say, a shoulder or summer month. But the demands on the leadership team and the demands on the staff are radically different, because my September customer is 90%, 80% leisure. My February customer or March customer is 90% business. The business guy gets up, goes to work, comes back at 5 o'clock. Really not a lot of demands on our time as leaders and staff in the middle of the day. That summer customer wants to know everything about what the best restaurant is and all the great things Victoria has to offer. Wants to chat, yes, but it's great. That's what it is to be in a tourist destination. So really, even in the same hotel in different seasons, you can have different demands on your leadership. Your question, Dr. Long?
A couple of times you referred to hands-on leadership and leading by example.
Yes.
Are those both the same, and what do they look like? What is it?
Both are the same, hands-on leadership and leading. I think they're both. They should be related. I mean, actually, she wasn't able to be here today, but we had a front desk staff member who, I was talking to her about this presentation yesterday, and she says, you should tell the story about the guest back in about 2 months ago. She reminded me of a story that I remembered, but I didn't think of using it in this presentation. And so for hands-on leadership, it was that I was noticing a guest walking across the lobby. She was coming out of the elevator. Our bellman was away. She had a couple bags and jumped in, took her bags, grabbed them, walked her to the desk, asked her how her stay was. I was wearing a name tag, said Bill Lewis, general manager, so I expected that she might know who I was. But regardless, you jump in there, you walk the person to the desk, you ask about their stay, start to check them out. A young lady behind the desk was there to check her out, and she started talking to the lady at the desk, and young employee. She's been with us about 2 years. She's actually starting here in your BCom program next September, so she's made a good career choice. And she started boasting about how my stay was so magnificent. You should tell the manager. And she was talking to the front desk girl with me standing beside her. You should tell the manager what a wonderful team we have here, and the attention to detail is magnificent. And I can't believe what a great team that the manager in this hotel leads. And she's just going on and on and on. And the young lady at the desk is sitting there going,
He knows.
it's right there. So finally she got it, because she was just so busy telling her story, which is great, because that's exactly the kind of servant experience we shoot for in the Magnolia, is somebody boasting about how great their stay was when they check out. So she was pretty embarrassed when she finally figured out that I was holding her bags right beside her. And she just tipped me $1, which was great. And she just went the biggest flush of red across her face. And I walked her to her car, and the whole time, put her bags in her trunk, welcomed her, told her to come back, and asked about her travel plans. And the whole time, bright red, she's going, I just tipped the general manager $1. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I said, no, it's great, don't worry, fantastic, come back anytime. But that's the hands-on leadership. It's just jumping in there, seeing an opportunity, and showing that if there's a piece of garbage on the floor, I'm picking it up. If there is a guest that needs service, I'm offering to help them. And anything you come across, jumping in and pitching it. Our whole management team jumps out and checks people in, checks people out when it gets busy, because in a 64-room hotel with limited staff resources, that's what you do. So those would be a couple examples, and yeah, I think they are the same. Earl.
Didn't let you go.
I know.
So as someone that's a tiny bit older GM than you, I'll go back to a question that you referred to before, and that's what do you want to do when you grow up?
Haven't figured it out yet. I'm having fun what I'm doing. That's probably the honest answer. I always.
Aspiration. Something up there that you.
Not necessarily. Balance. I think that decade where I accomplished a whole lot taught me to enjoy life, and this looked like a great opportunity, and I think more good opportunity will come from it, whether that's in 3 years or 2 years or 5 years or whatever that time span is. I'm probably not in a rush the same way I was when I was moving through career jobs and finishing MBAs and having kids and moving every 2 years. I'm not in that kind of rush anymore, but at the same time, eyes are wide open, and we'll see what comes from it. But I think at this point probably staying in Victoria for the next number of years, not necessarily forever, but yeah.
Are you recommending
No,
Similia Trailing.
First of all, I totally buy into his philosophy.
Hey,
Enjoy yourself.
you settled in nicely for a number of years there too. Mr. Leclerc?
Are you mobile?
Am I mobile?
You just referred to staying in
Yeah, I would say for the next number of years, probably not. But am I mobile again in my career? Probably, if that's a fair answer. I did some moving early with the young kids, and I know I'm in a business that if I want to move up a number of levels from where I am, it's going to require mobility. So that'll be a choice I'll have to make in a few years. But I kind of did happily settle into this role for a few years to settle down with my family. And there were also some, I think as some of you know me personally, there were some family needs that I thought I needed to be in Victoria for the next few years, so that's part of the equation. But mobility in the future, you always have to consider it, because there's, it's, I'm not going to let myself get bored, and I'm going to always enjoy what I do. And if that would require a challenging position that would be somewhere else a number of years down the road, then we'll see what happens, right?
You mentioned earlier on the importance of being a leader to other people. I know you've mentioned a lot of people through the Magnolia since you've done that. Can you just make a couple of comments about the benefits and the role that you would play as a mentor to young people who might not be there very long,
Yep.
but maybe have a career?
I think the best example I could give is that I love getting people who are fairly fresh out of school and want to learn. And it is a two-way street. You have to recognize as a leader that particularly in a 64-room hotel, I may not have all the opportunities for them. So my goal is to teach them as much in the period of time that I can. And if the opportunity is outside my walls, then it'll have to be. We had a young lady who graduated from UVic about 2 years ago, right after I got to the hotel. We didn't have anything to grow her in our building. We didn't have anything to grow her in the building at the Marriott at the time. And so with very open communication throughout, we shook hands when she left and said, hopefully we get to work together again one day. And hopefully she learned while she was with us. But I think if that answers your question, I want to see people learn and grow. And I think the challenge for any company is to learn and grow and keep them in your organizations, because you've invested into them as well as them investing into you. And if you can make use and help them grow, it's a two-way street. I mean, I had 17 years of it with Coastal Hotels and learned a lot, got a lot of great opportunity. And I just, so that'd be my answer to that. You had a question?
Yeah, I worked at the Old Lady too. Who was your manager when you worked there?
Larry Fulmore.
Oh, Larry, yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
When I worked there, it was Dorothy.
Okay.
And Dorothy was the general manager, and Larry, he moved up from kind of like doing, below Dorothy, and then he became the GM.
Yep.
Larry did. So I know what Larry looks like. He looks a lot like you.
He had a mustache though.
That's right.
And I'm not Larry. No, but Larry hired me in 1992, I think. 1991, I think I started there. So yeah, he was a manager at that time for a couple of years. Yes, Margaret.
I've noticed your social media engagement's really increased over the last few years, and I'm wondering, are you finding some measurable success with it?
Yes, but not, yes and no. We do see some business from it. We don't see quantifiable business that would necessarily pay for all the resources we put into it in the last year. But I do think it's a growing and emerging part of our marketing plan, PR plan really, because really it is part of your PR and communications plan more than anything. So in terms of, say, Facebook and Twitter, we've gotten business out of it, absolutely. We've had great communication and dialogue with some of our customers through it. It isn't necessarily paying for itself dollar for dollar or a return from, say, what an ad campaign would, but it isn't necessarily falling flat and not making money. On the other side of the social media with review sites, TripAdvisor, in terms of the attention we put into that, it pays for itself many times over. It is, in an independent hotel, it is staggering to see the amount of power that little website has. Big website, sorry. But if you see the number of, the amount of traffic that comes through to an independent hotel based on your hotel reviews, you can quantify that really easily. Yes?
So you spoke about went from the Vancouver Coastal Hotel at the airport.
Yep.
And going to Edmonton and doing Coastal Hotels there, and then now you're at Magnolia.
Yep.
That's a very broad spectrum of properties you can have. And I'm just wondering, as you go into those properties, you spoke about bringing in a
I don't think that it's not as different. The difference in every building is finding those, finding the vision and defining sort of what those carrots are and what the goals are, and those can be internal and external goals. You know, with somewhere like the Edmonton Plaza, you know, you're using, I think you're using different motivators. You're using employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction compared to other hotels. You're using market share, employee engagement. In the Magnolia, you might have totally different goals too. I think the key is to really identify and tell people at the Magnolia and tell people at the Coast in Edmonton, you know, what you want to be as a hotel and how we're going to achieve that, and then get the team charged up with delivering those goals. So the goals are very different in every property, but I don't think the process, you know, once you've defined those goals, I think the process is kind of roughly the same. It's, you know, getting teamwork and finding who has the right skill sets and just, you know, getting people charged up to accomplish a goal. There we go.
So, Mr. Lewis, on behalf of everyone here, I'd like to thank you.
Thanks, Lana.
We value your insight, your experience, and knowledge that you shared with us today.
Perfect. Thanks, Lana. And we get to spend the whole summer with you.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. This is our intern, Magnolia Hotel. Thank you very much. It was fun.